Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. So today, Janelle Brown is gearing up for what can only be described as a personal mission, and that mission? To finally get herself spiritually released from Kody Brown. Now here's where the irony gets thick enough to cut with a knife. Janelle plans to go to leaders in the Apostolic United Brethren church to ask for this release, but the very leader who would grant it is currently caught up in a lawsuit with his former spiritual wife. She's been trying to get a release from him for decades and claims he's taken property that belongs to her. So let that sink in for a moment. Janelle may be released by a prophet who refuses to release his own wife. Yes, we'll definitely be unpacking that. At the same time, Janelle is bracing herself for Kody possibly re-entering her life, and that idea comes with a clear warning from her daughter, Maddie. Maddie gently reminds her mom that Kody has a habit of showing up not to heal, but to stir the pot, to bring confusion, to create chaos. And honestly, if timing were an Olympic sport, Kody would have a gold medal. For years, he's had a knack for popping back into Janelle's life just when she's starting to move forward, finding ways to pull her back in. Now these days, Kody insists he's completely done with polygamy. He says he has zero interest in ever living that lifestyle again. According to him, that chapter is closed for good. Yet in this episode, he suddenly decides he needs to apologize to all of the women to set them free, even though, let's be honest, they've already set themselves free. From where I'm standing, this feels less like closure and more like a storyline, a little damage control, a little ego management, and maybe, just maybe, an attempt to protect what's left of his marriage with Robin. Meanwhile, Janelle and her close friends are talking openly about how ready she is to take the next step and officially seek her spiritual release. Janelle reflects on her past and shares a story that still surprises people. She explains that her mom originally came into her life trying to save her from polygamy. In her words, no daughter of hers was going to marry into some crazy cult. But life has a funny way of flipping the script. Her mom ended up marrying Kody's dad, and they actually tied the knot just months before Janelle and Kody did. Janelle admits that when that happened, she thought, well, that's going to be a little awkward to explain. At first, it felt strange, but she eventually told herself, okay, maybe this is good. At least I'm not alone here. Still, she acknowledges that much of her extended family didn't understand her choices at all. Many of them pulled back, unsure how to stay connected, because they truly believed she'd gone off the deep end. And here's where I want to pause for a moment. I find it interesting how Janelle's family is often portrayed as the unreasonable ones, when in reality they were worried, they cared. They didn't want someone they loved getting pulled into a dangerous religious group. They were concerned about her safety. And honestly, that concern didn't come out of nowhere. So let's do a quick history check. Janelle and Adam Barber were together starting in 1988. That time period was marked by real violence within polygamous sects in Utah and throughout the western United States. This wasn't some harmless phase. It was a volatile era, and families had very real reasons to be afraid. And with that context in mind, Janelle's journey and her family's worries start to make a whole lot more sense.
All right, let's slow this down and walk through some very heavy history, because this context matters. Back in 1978, the leader of the Apostolic United Brethren was killed, and shockingly, it was carried out by two spiritual wives acting under the direction of a so-called prophet named Ervil LeBaron. Ervil lived in Mexico and followed a church founded by his brother. Eventually, he split off from that brother, Joel, and declared that he alone knew who the true prophets were. Ervil decided that anyone he believed was a false prophet needed to be eliminated. In his belief system, there were certain sins he claimed were so serious that even the death of Jesus didn't cover them. Under this extreme version of fundamentalism, followers believed they had the righteous authority to take someone's life if they felt that person had committed one of those unforgivable sins. This idea was known as blood atonement. So Ervil went on what can only be described as a warpath. During his lifetime, his brother Joel was killed. Another brother died under mysterious circumstances in a car accident. He was responsible for the killing of Rulon Allred, a major leader within the AUB. Ervil was eventually convicted for that crime. The women involved were later acquitted, and the story is complicated and disturbing, but the end result is this: Ervil LeBaron died in prison. But his influence didn't die with him. After his death, a group of devoted followers found his writings and began treating them almost like scripture. Ervil had left behind detailed writings. He was known for staying up all night writing obsessively. I actually interviewed two of his daughters, Anna and Celia LeBaron, a few years ago. They talked about barely knowing their father, but vividly remembered how much he wrote. Those writings included lists of people he believed should be killed, and long after Ervil was gone, younger followers took it upon themselves to finish the job. This is the environment Janelle was stepping into. In June of 1988, things escalated even further. Followers of Ervil decided it was time to complete his hit list. On the same day, around 4 in the afternoon, coordinated attacks happened across Texas. The victims were former members who had left the sect. They were targeted under the doctrine of blood atonement. In Houston, Martha Skanowitz was shot 3 times. At another location, Dwayne Skanowitz and his daughter Jenny were killed. Jenny was targeted simply because she was there with her father. In a Dallas suburb, Ed Marin was shot and later died from his injuries. This was the peak of violent sect-against-sect warfare. At the same time, the AUB itself was in turmoil. After Rulon Allred was killed in 1978, Owen Allred took over leadership. Around the time Janelle joined, horrifying practices were being exposed within the church. Some leaders claimed they were literal descendants of Jesus and believed their bloodlines needed to remain pure. That belief led to sexual abuse of their own daughters. Let's be clear, this wasn't consensual in any way. It was abuse. Another leader was found to be assaulting both men and women under the guise of medical treatments, using colonics as a cover. Multiple men were accused. This led to a mass exodus from the AUB in the late 1980s through the 1990s and into the early 2000s. In the late 1990s, violence continued. At the Bluffdale Church in Utah, the same church Janelle attended, a man walked in during services and slit another man's throat. Once again, it was justified by blood atonement. Not long after Janelle joined, a member named Gustavo Palacios was arrested for abusing his stepdaughters, again tied to that same twisted doctrine. His wife, who happens to be Christine Brown's first cousin, was also arrested for allowing it to happen. And during all of this, a woman named Virginia Hill sued the AUB, claiming the church stole over $1 million from her and used it to buy property that the group still owns today. Owen Allred was implicated in that case as well. So, when Janelle's family expressed fear, when they distanced themselves, those fears were not irrational. These groups were dangerous, manipulative, coercive, and at times violent. People had been kidnapped. People had been killed. And the LDS Church, the mainstream church, has always been firmly against polygamy. So, no, her family wasn't cruel or heartless for stepping back. They were scared, for her and for themselves. Janelle admits she went in with rose-colored glasses. She thought it would be beautiful and fulfilling. But the conflict started almost immediately. There was no exit plan. She was deeply committed to her faith and believed she just needed to figure it out. This is something we see often with converts. People who choose these belief systems later in life sometimes cling to them even harder than those born into them because they've sacrificed so much to be there. Family ties, stability, normalcy. They believe they're on a righteous path and that everyone else is wrong. That belief can make someone ignore red flags. And in Janelle's case, those red flags showed up as abuse. What happened between her and Mary was abusive. What happened between her and Cody was abusive. At the time, she was a true believer, and that belief kept her there. But now, she's in a different place. She started talking about wanting a spiritual release, something she only seriously considered after learning about it from Mary. When asked if she would ever go to counseling with Cody and Robin to fix things, her answer was immediate and honest. No. She doesn't like them. She sees no point. And that brings us to the final question she's asking herself now. How does she truly end this? There was never a legal marriage, so there's no legal divorce. But a spiritual release would mean being freed from the religious covenant she once made, a final step towards closure.
Janelle's friends are having conversations with her behind the scenes, trying to help her move on. But Janelle is still stuck in this mindset that she's bound to Cody through a spiritual connection. See, when they were married in the EUB temple, they were given a blessing that tied them together for time and all eternity. That's not just a metaphor. Within their faith, it means that even in the afterlife, they're still married. According to the teachings, if a woman separates from her husband, the only way to reach heaven is to remain celibate and faithful, even if her husband is gone. Essentially, Janelle still feels like she's married to Cody. She believes she can't move forward with her life, or anyone else, until that connection is officially severed. That's why getting a spiritual release is her next step. As she explains, she wants to make sure that if her religion turns out to be true after she dies, she won't be stuck in heaven married to Cody. She wants to be free. She says it plainly. She needs to make sure all the little pieces are in place. The idea of cutting this tie has become more real in her mind, and she's determined to follow through. She even imagines waking up in heaven married to Cody, and shudders at the thought. Nope, not having that happen, she says.
It's interesting to note that most other women on the show have already let go of the religion entirely. Kody doesn't believe anymore. Mary is crystal clear. She doesn't follow the faith, she won't do polygamy again, and she doesn't even know if she'll go to heaven. Christine has also distanced herself from it. Janelle, however, still calls it her religion. That attachment makes this process more complex for her. It's not just about Kody, it's about faith and identity. And yes, she did get the release. Kody even confirmed it on Nick Vile's podcast, saying that 2 of his wives had received spiritual releases. To get that release, Janelle had to go to the AUB Brethren, and it was the prophet who granted it, Dave Watson. Here's the kicker. Dave Watson is currently being sued by one of his plural wives. She claims he locked her out of property, spent weeks away with his favorite wife, took all the money from her businesses, and refused to grant her a release for years. So Janelle's spiritual freedom came at the hands of a man who is accused of doing exactly what Kody did to her. Dave claims he has 8 wives, but that's not true. 3, maybe 4 have already left. 1 remains, but only because he won't let her go. The irony here is impossible to ignore. Janelle turned to a cult leader who was actively abusing his own wives to get the release from a husband who abused her. It's a stark reminder of how thick the indoctrination and manipulation can be. These systems prey on faith, hope for salvation, and the promise of being righteous or even divine in the afterlife. Giving that up is not easy, even for someone as smart as Janelle. The good news? She got the release, and now, hopefully, she can finally move on, settle in North Carolina, reconnect with her life, keep moving forward. After years of her family trying to protect her, she's finally free, at least spiritually, from a man who controlled her for far too long. And the man who gave her that release? Possibly worse than Kody. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.